Proud supporters of Africa this week. Engine, with us, you are number one.
Welcome back to Africa This Week. In this half of the program, we review Kenya's strategic presence in Somalia, job creation in South Africa, and the African Growth and Opportunity Act. As Kenya intensifies its military campaign in Somalia, focus is now shifting to how East Africa will manage the transition in the event of a victory. We discuss Kenya's strategic presence in Somalia with Abdullahi Halake, Horn of Africa analyst at the International Crisis Group.
The invasion of Somalia by Kenya took everybody by surprise. Kenya had every capacity to deal with Al-Shabaab from distance without necessarily committing its troops. The cost in blood and treasure of going to Somalia will increase over the next few months, depending on how things evolve in the theater of war. But the thing is, the critical thing here is Kenya is fighting Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab, who is Al-Shabaab? These are, amorphous, faceless people who we do not know who they are. So using conventional means to fight a very unconventional group presents its own challenges. I mean, history is littered with, big army, more sophisticated than Kenyans, who've tried to deal with this kind of group. So, I mean, it is understandable when people register their unease about the whole operation of going into Somalia.
What options were available to Kenyan authorities, though, Abdullahi? I mean, you can't have a situation where this guerrilla, incognito group has penetrated your territory, is terrorizing your people. You as a country, as a government, need to take some sort of a stand, and this is probably what motivates the Kenyan government.
From the outset, let me make it very clear. Kenya has got legitimate security concerns as far as Somalia is concerned, and specifically as far as Al-Shabaab is concerned. But I mean, Kenya has also an inordinate amount of capacity to deal with this group without necessarily committing its troops on the ground. Most of the money that Al-Shabaab gets, passes through Nairobi. So one of the ways, it's not necessarily easy, probably it might take even longer, is economic strangulation of Al-Shabaab. Without money, Al-Shabaab will not have the capacity, to buy stockpiles of weapons that they have, to recruit the number of people that they have. I mean, it is one of the biggest way of, just slowly but surely trying to deal with Al-Shabaab is economic strangulation. But secondly, the other option that is open to Kenya is, intelligence gathering. Kenya needs to have, a high-level intelligence about the operations, the movement, the structure, the command and control of Al-Shabaab without necessarily going in. And Kenya has done that, fairly well before. So the whole operation of going in without necessarily taking away from the fact that Kenya has got legitimate security concern could have been done. But now the problem is, what is the goal of this operation?
Right.
What is the mission? What is the exit strategy?
Right.
And these haven't been very clearly defined by the Kenyan military in order to, take forward this operation. So it's going to be the biggest problem with this kind of operation is you might end up, being bogged down, sucked into, the entire politics of Somalia. And it's not an exaggeration to say that, United States went there. I don't think they want to be reminded what the repercussion was. Somalia was there, Ethiopia was there in 2006. So they were, you have to be very careful when you launch this kind of operation.
Right.
You make it very clear what your exit strategies are, the goal and mission, and how victory will look like.
Entrepreneurship Week kicked off in Cape Town, featuring a series of events to drive job creation and accelerate the growth and development of entrepreneurship in the city. Ashley Harvey spoke to Harun Bharat, UCT professor who currently serves as the advisor to the Minister of Economic Development, on the recipe for growth, development and job creation.
In growing economies, what you tend to find is that there are 4 or 5 factors over 20-30-year period that have resulted in these rapidly growing outcomes for these economies, sometimes in excess of 15-20% growth periods per year over 20 years. Most of the success is due to things such as exploiting opportunities in export markets, knowledge transfer from innovators abroad so that you can develop better products, a capable and effective government, ensuring that there are very high levels of savings and investments, And this process of what has come to be known as self-discovery, that, as the Chinese president once said, that you walk across the river by feeling the stones, that as a society and as an economy, you figure out what the best interventions and the most effective mechanisms for generating growth are. Some will fail, some will succeed, but you try through a process of self-discovery. And those seem to be the combination of elements, along with standard things such as macroeconomic stability and so on, low fiscal deficits. They seem to, together in different forms and to differing degrees, have resulted in many of these economies. There's sort of 13 or 14 of them that have grown at a tremendous rate over a long period.
Now, the future of our economy lies in small, medium and micro enterprises, where entrepreneurship is the creator of jobs and of wealth. What needs to be done to develop this sector?
There are a whole series of areas where interventions can be had in terms of generating growth in the micro enterprise sector. I'll just pick one, and that is in the area of state procurement. You'll find that the state is the procurer of a whole range of goods and services from the private sector. There are unfortunately unintended or intended barriers to entry to these procurement schedules, if you like, for the informal sector or for micro enterprises in particular. If you don't speak English, if you cannot read or write, cannot get to the tender office, and you cannot fill in a form that has 500 pages, you will never get access to a state tender. That's a vital barrier to entry for micro enterprises. Yet it's a huge opportunity if the state works together with micro enterprises in providing those opportunities for them. And that's just one area that has worked successfully the world over, where you set quotas, where you limit the number of large firms that can access state tenders and so on, to explicitly grow the informal sector or the micro enterprise sector.
Now, a big deterrent for young people to become entrepreneurs and create startups are the strict labor laws. People seem to think that it's safer to work for an employer rather than start up their own business.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it depends, you know, that's sort of, it's a difficult argument to make because it's either the cause and the effect, right? To some extent, the arguments that the elements, I wouldn't say the entire labor regulatory regime, but the elements of the labor legislation which need to be tweaked in order to create further employment. That's a separate issue from whether you would rather work for an employer because you feel labor laws are a problem. I think in the context of small and medium enterprises, it's probably the problem lies not so much on labor regulation, but rather on what we call product market regulation. That there are a whole series of barriers to entry in product markets that prevent micro enterprises from thriving in South Africa relative to other countries.
Lastly, South Africa is in an employment crisis with 33.1 million unemployed young people. What is the recipe for growth, employment and job creation?
I think, you know, again, the many ingredients, the 3 or 4 that high growth countries have undertaken are important: high savings, macro stability, all sorts of things. I think at this point, in addition, what we need to think about as a country is very specific, what I call micro interventions. We need to look at alleviating or assisting the unemployed in searching for jobs through things such as a transport voucher. We need to consider credit and insurance mitigation support to the informal sector and micro enterprises to grow that sector. We need to re-examine the way in which large companies are invested in terms of employment generation. Changes in technological mixes through states incentive systems. So I think there are a whole range of factors and interventions that we can try. Some may fail, but certainly some will succeed, and it's those that will start closing the gap between where the jobs are and those who are seeking jobs are the ones that we need to build on.
At the sidelines of Nigeria's recent economic summit, Wale Famurewa met with Rosa Whittaker, President and CEO of the Whittaker Group, a top 100 foreign policy global think of 2010. They spoke about the need to demonstrate broad support to enhancing and extending the African Growth and Opportunity Act.
AGOA is now a 10-year-old law in America which provides African countries with the opportunity to export essentially all goods into the U.S. markets without duty and without quota. And it was really a trade and investment centered approach to development. And after 10 years, it was pioneering for us, but after 10 years, we can see that it has delivered. Untapped potential, but it has delivered. We've seen a tripling of African exports to the U.S. under AGOA. We've seen over 300,000 jobs created, especially labor-intensive jobs in like the garment sector. We're seeing in South Africa with the car industry. So it's been transformative, but it could do much more.
And as you mentioned, there's untapped potential and we can do a lot more. In Nigeria in particular, what we see is that really it's a case of oil going to the US, but we're not seeing enough of other goods and other commodities and other products taking advantage of this.
Yes, because actually what AGOA is, it's an opportunity, not a guarantee. So in order for it to work, there has to be a number of other things in place. When we look at, I just spoke about the opportunity for petrochemicals here transformed into synthetic textiles for garment production. That's going to require a reliable and cost-effective power supply. So until you get the power right, it's not going to work. But I really do see this government really tackling, here in Nigeria, tackling the difficult issues. So there's a renewed sense of hope and confidence that Nigeria's time for maximizing the benefits of AGOA will arrive. And I should also say that, you know, AGOA is not a panacea. It was a very modest U.S. initiative. But we've seen, even with this modest U.S. initiative that did not cost us very much in the States, it's had a very good effect. So we're now looking to build on it. We're now in a process of renewing key provisions of AGOA and building on it to see, for one, how can we expand the product list, and also we're looking to see if we can offer tax incentives so that U.S. companies that invest in Africa in labor-intensive industries will be able to repatriate their profits back to the U.S. tax-free. And also they could get a tax credit, these companies, if they purchase products with significant African content. That would be a significant, I think, benefit addition to AGOA, and that's what we're working for now.
Let's talk beyond Nigeria now, and of course the broader African continent. I know your group is very involved in trying to attract investments into Africa. Talk us through the opportunities you see and perhaps models that could work. During the presentations earlier today, I did hear a speaker allude to the fact that BMW, interestingly, is taking advantage of AGOA by putting factories in Africa so that they can export those cars to the U.S.
Well, yes, I think there are significant advantages. I mean, and just basically AGOA includes essentially all products. So if you take a particular African country and you look at sectors of comparative and competitive advantage, you will see an opportunity for AGOA because we have a very large market in the U.S. Here in Nigeria, for example, one other area of underexploited potential is the hides market. If we can get the hides market working and added value so we can transform those hides into leathers, then to shoe production, that will be phenomenally transformative. It sounds more difficult, I think, than it actually is, because right now in Italy, most of the Italian shoes that you're seeing are actually made with Ethiopian and Nigerian hides. So why can't we add value? So we see the opportunity for value addition in agricultural products. So I think it's country by country case. In South Africa, it was the cars. In Lesotho, it's been, AGOA has had a tremendous effect on the garment industry. More than 40,000 jobs created in the garment sector with exports to the U.S. In Kenya, we're seeing it in the flower and garment industry and sectors like tea.